I can't predict the future, and I don't know what the Fed's going to do, but the chatter is there's going to be another like 25 basis points increase, and then come spring we're going to see a lot of rate drops happening, and I envision that for the spring to be, I wouldn't say robust, but to be active. And we're going to be in a market where it's not going to be a seller's market as we were. We just put something on online, and in 3 weeks you have multiple offers. But it's not going to be to high hell either. So this medium is perfect for real estate.
Welcome to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, and you want to learn some of the insider secrets and uncensored truths from the true professionals in and around real estate, you've come to the right place. Now, let's buckle up for the uncensored truth about real estate and join your host, Brian Cardenas.
All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. If you are catching us on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get notified the next time we drop an episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, we would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star rating and share it with your friends and family. We'd love to be able to get this great information that our guests are bringing to you every single week. And this week, we've got a guest from New York City, Jeffrey St. Arromand. He is with Serhant. Thank you for joining us, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and being on this platform.
Yeah, my pleasure. And as you know, we like to try to educate people on stuff. But one of the things I would like to hear from you is give us your background. Like, where did you come from? You got a little bit of a unique story in terms of where you came from and how you got into real estate, even though I think practically every real estate agent has their own unique story. Yours is a little different than what I've heard before. So share us your background and how'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people are pivoting from different careers, but actually nowadays with the popularity of real estate, people are coming in straight in from college. So that's given it a different dynamic. But myself specifically, I worked in television sports for quite some time. Really did a good job there. 2-time Emmy Award-winning producer, worked with everyone from Kanye West to Tom Brady, in fact. And
nice.
And hopefully he'll be around for another year. And while I was doing that, I always had interest in real estate. And I really, at that point, I had just gotten my license and I dipped my toe in the water, as it were. And I just thought it was something that I wanted to do and really pursue. And at that time, I was what you call a permalancer. So I worked for everyone from TNT, CBS, NBC. But they were looking to get cut costs, as is the case now, and look for more staff production folks, and you pay them less, quite frankly. So I wanted to get ahead of the curve, and I really knew. And that point, it was after the recession, previously, and I knew that my skills that I have here in television are really transferable. So I deem what I call the power pivot. I think it's important to understand when it's time to make a jump, be prepared in doing so, and move forward. And what I did is just, I really had a pretty high bar in the television production industry, and I wanted to maintain that bar as I made the transition. So I thought it was important and I'm a big believer in this, in coaching. So I was, right. I did Tom Ferry, I did Buffini, I did Ninja Selling, and even here at Serhant, I did Sell Like Serhant, and I moderate that for a lot of newer agents, and even agents who are looking to take their careers to the next level. So that was really my path, and I thought that and I'm a big follower of Gary Vee, and he's years ago always wanted to push everyone to do more content. And I was like, well, who's better to do it than me? I mean, I did this all the time.
It's your life.
Now, the big difference for me is that the roles are reversed. In my past life, I was a producer, and I still am a producer because I produce, transactions, and I produce all the content I do here. But now I'm going to be the quote unquote talent and be in front of the camera. So I had to get out of my head a little bit. And I think that's the biggest issue with a lot of agents that are uncomfortable with being in front of the camera. I had that hesitation because I can make someone else look like a star, and I have to make myself look like a star. So
A little different.
got on my way for that. I decided to go all the way, and coincidentally, that kind of aligned along the time of when I made the transition into to go to Serhant. And we're the only firm that has a full in-house studio here, and these people are really talented. In fact, I'm in our podcast studio here. And so once I got that, I was like, okay, now I'm moving forward 100%. And I've really gone at it and really try to provide a lot of great content, a lot of value, educating, and just using this as a platform to advise my clients, and supplementing it with the stuff that we do typically as agents with your newsletters and your mailers and everything else. I just thought it was the right time. And so it all worked at the right time.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because, a lot of people that do get into real estate, they are not comfortable, creating content, not comfortable being in front of the camera. What do you think is some good advice that you can give to people that either are in real estate and listening or watching or thinking about getting into it? Because it is really important to be a content creator. I mean, the role of a real estate agent has really changed over the last decade, really. What kind of tips can you give people about, being afraid to be in front of the camera and why they should do it?
Right. Well, one thing, I mean, oftentimes people don't know what to really talk about or who should they try to follow to see what to do. I mean, look at some of the top agents in your market, see what they're doing and see how they're doing it, and see how can you then put a different spin to what they're doing and provide that as some content. I'll take a step back. When I was in television, I would always look at my competitors. I'd see, okay, what's Fox doing? What's NBC doing with their features or whatever? And what can I do to really differentiate myself from what they're doing? So that's one tip. The other is to go, and this is so simple and basic, just go in front of that mirror and speak to the mirror. Look at yourself speaking and get comfortable with it. Because a lot of times we create these issues that really aren't there.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
and most importantly, don't get caught on it being perfect. Just get it done. And it's just like, to stay in a sports analogy, it's like you got to get a bunch of at bats. You're going to hit a home run soon enough, but don't swing for the fences right away. Just get some contact. Let's get a couple of singles. Let's get a couple of doubles. And then when you get good, you try to steal third base. And then, maybe you get the bases loaded, you hit a grand slam. But start slowly and be consistent. That's the most important thing. And then the other thing I tell folks is once they get started, you aren't doing this for other agents. People, a lot of agents get caught up in that and they think they're providing content for other agents. Keep in mind who your audience is and the information that they need. Because right now, to be perfectly honest, there's so much information out there. What we want to do is we want to provide how that information is really relevant in your micro market. So people get content all the time. Get information all the time, but they don't really know how it pertains to them and their transaction. So try to really make it, is that whole KISS thing. Keep it simple, stupid. Keep it really simple. Focus on one subject matter. And then that's one piece of content. Then you move on and you focus on something else after mastering that one subject matter.
Yeah, I think that the knowing your audience is a really, really great message to keep in mind, because there is a lot of stuff out there. Even podcasts, for example, there's a lot of podcasts where realtors are talking to realtors, and it's not that there's not value in that, but hopefully that is their intended audience anyway, because that's what it is ending up being anyway. And that's kind of the difference. And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to come to the consumer where they are and educate them and help them, in just being more knowledgeable about real estate in general. Because I think there's a difference when you're creating, short reels or even a, longer YouTube video or things like that. There's a difference in what people are able to consume and learn about the person on screen than if it's something in a format like a live video, or obviously meeting them in person, or a podcast, long form discussion. So knowing that there is a differences there, what is the thing from the consumer standpoint that they should place value in? Should they place it in that pre-recorded, edited content? Should they try to digest some more live stuff? Like, what would you advise the consumer to do in making their determinations as to who they want to work with?
I think it's important, I'm not going to give you a definitive answer on that. I think it's a little bit of both, to be quite honest. And I think it's really more, the onus really lies on who's providing the content. And whether it be live or taped or whatever it is, you just need to know that your information is accurate and timely. I think one thing, and I give you a classic example of that. I say this all the time: the media sells headlines, we sell homes. So the biggest bane of our existence right now is interest rates. So if I'm someone, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that interest rates aren't high, and that it does pose a challenge for certain price points, but I'm not gonna tell you the same messaging that interest rates are high, because what does that do? What difference does that make? I need to
Right.
give you some information that's really tangible and solid. So I'll tell you what are different type of creative loan products that you can have. Why not do an ARM, a 5, 7, 10-year ARM? Why not look to do a purchase SEMA that'll save you money on your closing costs? Why not look to buy down your rate, so that ultimately over the course of 30 years, if you choose to go a 30-year loan, 30-year mortgage, it'll be a lot less. Or why do a 30-year altogether anyway? And our adage that everyone says, you date the rate, you marry the home. Have the rate for now, as it's a little higher, maybe buy it down now, and as the rates drop, as we all are presuming that it will be the case into the spring, then you can refinance. So that's the type of messaging that you want to create, whether it be live or tape, is just tangible messaging that kind of, I don't want to say fight against the headlines, but really interpolates what the headlines are and how can I now in this market, which I think is a great time to buy because there's a lot of negotiability now, to take advantage of it, as opposed to waiting because you hear all the headlines, the rates are so high, and you wait whenever all the other buyers get off the fence, and now you're back in the same predicament. So I think it's really the importance of the messaging.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point, and actually had this discussion just this morning with my team. One of my team members was mentioning how she's seeing stuff on TikTok, and it's the sensational headlines that you're talking about. And we all know the reality is that headlines are what sells, what grabs attention. And she's frustrated because the message wasn't productive like you're talking about. It was, rates are high, and it was kind of like, here's the negativity. It wasn't offering solutions, and that's what you're talking about. Okay, it is what it is. Let's not focus on the circumstance. Let's focus on how do we solve for that? Let's provide some options for people. But the reality is that headline does grab attention. And if you don't grab somebody's attention, you don't get your underlying message out. There's a difference between having accurate meat of your messaging, because we see this all the time. Like I just saw Goldman Sachs was predicting I think it was 25% decline in home prices in my market in Phoenix.
Okay.
We do not believe that to be the case at all. The experts that really study this stuff don't anticipate that happening. But you grab the attention, and maybe I didn't actually read the article. I saw it on the news. A lot of times you see a headline, and then you read the article, and it's got a completely different message in the bones of it than the headline. How do you balance that when you're trying to get attention with an eye-catching headline to stop the scroll, but still be accurate and not be misleading in that headline? Because negativity sells, it gets attention, and we don't want to be negative. Like, how do you balance that out?
I mean, I think what I oftentimes do, and I think it's an easy way of getting around that, is simply saying, headlines are high, rates have gotten really high. Now what do I do? You still have the same attention. You're still letting them know that rates are indeed high, but what's the solution? So throw out what the big headline is, but on the back end, you're saying, but here's how I'm going to fix it. So enough to grab the attention and have a solution. That I think that's the biggest way. Or a very simple thing, and a lot of people are doing it now. You have your green screen, you look at the article, and you do just what you said. So Goldman Sachs says this headline reads 25%, but when you really get into the meat and bones of what this article is saying, those two things really don't match. So now you're breaking down what the media is doing, and so you're coming to them as a true source of where the market is, not so much glamorizing headlines just to get clicks.
That's my next TikTok and reel. So I'm going to stay away from you.
Exactly.
I like the idea though, like you still have to have that attention grabbing headline, and it might be the negative aspect, but attach a solution to it. Absolutely. And don't bury the solution in the body of the message, because people don't get there a lot of times. That's the sad reality of things, is they don't see past the headline, do they?
They don't. And it's the old journalism adage, don't bury the lead.
Yeah.
You know, you want the lead is the solution. So have that lead as part of your headline. So just play the same game that the media plays, but just, it's the bane of our existence. And I think collectively, as part of the real estate industry, we have to just be consistent with the messaging across the board. And then ultimately, the consumer is going to hear that and then really take a little step further deep into determine, is this guy really telling me the truth? And then here are some advisors, here are some mortgage brokers that can really substantiate that and say, here's a great product that I have. Here you can just put 5% down right now and not get a PMI insurance that you have to cover. Here's something that it'll give me 4%, but I have to put 20% down. So there are different options and different products. So that's really what you have to combat, is the messaging.
Yeah, and those are some good solutions that you're talking about. What do you see as one of the primary solutions to the interest rate problem that your clients are seeing? Because you're in a little bit of a different market than the average person. You're in more of the luxury space, right?
Yeah. So I think again, that's why I speak to something being real estate in general is macro versus micro. And now there's even a more micro once you get into an actual market like New York. So you have your ultra luxury of 10 million or above. And then in Brooklyn, you may have what's deemed as your luxury is 3 million or above. And then you have, buyers below that. And then you have buyers obviously even below that. So I think what's important though, is to understand, number one, the impact that it has on each market, but also showing what the solution is for that market. So let's go back to the luxury space. They're not really impacted by that much at all.
Right.
If you're purchasing something for $10 million plus, you're not too concerned about interest rates. You're really more so concerned about the overall market. What is, what's happening in Wall Street? What's my portfolio looking at as a whole? Is this a great time to expand my portfolio and pick up something else that will appreciate long term? So now you have to pivot your messaging to that audience. And then now when you come to those that are, in the 3 million price point, and again, I know we're in New York and 3 million sounds like it's, a luxury piece of property, but it's not necessarily. And so that $3 million buyer is going to be impacted by the rates. And so, now they may not be the 3 million buyer anymore because the rates, they're like a, $2.5 million buyer. So this is when the creative, financing that we talked about comes into play. And now when you get a lower price point where they're going to be directly impacted because their budgets are really tight. Now, maybe you want to consider seller financing. Speak to the seller and see if they're open to that. Because if they're in that price point, that seller has probably done several price cuts. They're probably now looking to offload this, obviously, if they're listing in this market. So they might be amenable to the seller financing. So you just have to understand each sector, wherever you are. New York is a bit of an anomaly, and see how the messaging then has to change into that sector.
What do you see happening? Let's say in not the ultra luxury, but in that 3 million range, maybe even a little bit below that. How is the market in your small micro market doing in terms of valuations and projections for where real estate's going to go? Because we hear a lot of people talking about a lot of craziness, in my opinion. And the reality isn't usually bearing out to match, all the scare tactics we hear.
Yeah, and I'll preface this answer by saying New York City is a complete outlier, in this market and what's happening. Like right now, we've had a lot of activity in January. We see the data is showing. I mean, I'll speak to Brooklyn specifically. There was just last week 60% more, homes going into contract last week. And part and parcel of that is because we've gotten 3 consecutive rate drops. And just last week, I want to say it's 28% increase in loan application and mortgage applications across the board. So those numbers are pretty indicative, and listen, I don't have I can't predict the future, and I don't know what the Fed's going to do, but the chatter is there's going to be another like 25 basis points increase. And then come spring, we're going to see a lot of rate drops happening. And I envision that for the spring to be I wouldn't say robust, but to be active. And we're going to be in a market where it's not going to be a seller's market as we were. We just put something on online, and in 3 weeks you have multiple offers. But it's not going to be to high hell either. So it's and this medium is perfect for real estate. Unfortunately, we've gone to polar opposites post pandemic, well, pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. There's nothing that's been like a comfortable medium. And that's where I think that's where we're going to land, where there's going to have to be some negotiability and some really accurate pricing involved. And the buyer is going to, look to get some more money, but have to find some comfortable medium between the two and find that sweet spot. That's what's really going to happen. And frankly, I'll tell you, this period, this year specifically, is really when the cream is going to rise to the top. And I'm referencing specifically to the brokers. This is when your knowledge is important, what you're advising is important, and your consistency in your messaging is so important right now.
Yeah, and you touched on a few really, really important things for consumers to understand. And I'll start with the real estate market. We've had wild extremes, in the last few years. And, during the pandemic, we saw interest rates go historically lower than we're probably ever going to see it again, unless we have another global pandemic. Right. But people got used to that, and their expectations shifted into thinking that, okay, this is a new norm, because it extended for quite a long time. It extended for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And we coming out of that, mindset has to shift and realize that was not normal. That was not the new norm. That was the anomaly. Okay. Absolutely. Then we didn't get into a normal mode. Like you said, we didn't get to glide into a comfort level. We went through like massive shock and went from, 2s and 3s to 7s, and darn near close to 8 in the span of less than a year. I mean, we got into the 7s, I think, by August. I think it was in the 6s in June and August in the 7s. So that's a massive shock to the system, and it pumped the brakes on everything. And so you started to see in most markets, not all markets, but the ones that tend to lead, like New York, Los Angeles, Florida, Arizona, we started to see prices kind of coming down a little bit, list prices coming down, a lot more negotiability. And I think a lot of us were kind of screaming from the rooftops to tell consumers, hey, listen, you're at a point now where you're going to start to get some deals from sellers, sellers that need to sell. And that's the key thing, is not everybody was trying to sell. First of all, we saw inventory go up, and because everyone was thinking, oh, I need to get in here before it's over. Inventory started to go up, then interest rates went up, and then inventory started to drop through the last 4 months of the year, because now sellers that were just trying to capitalize on maximizing their gains started to realize, okay, wait, I don't have an actual need to sell, so I'm going to take my house off the market. Well, now prices start to come down. The market started to soften. Now is the time we're telling buyers, you better get in now, because don't try to wait until interest rates come down, because we all believe they will. Because what's going to happen? Like, all of that disjointed activity is going to get sorted out, and buyers are going to come back in. Yep. Now we're going to stop having as much negotiability from sellers, because now they're going to take the leverage back.
Right. And then you're overpaying again. Yeah. It's like you just got to jump in the cycle before it revisits itself, because this entire business is all cyclical. We all know that. And so we see what's happened in the past, and we have to look at the history to determine how do we react moving forward. And so, that's, and I understand the notion of hey, I want to sit on the sidelines. I want to wait out a little bit. But, for those buyers that sit on the sideline, look, you're paying 100% interest rate for someone else's rent. That's what you're paying right there. So, I would say I would much rather pay a higher rate, get creative with my financing, and secure something now where I get a better price point, as opposed to waiting and paying way over ask for something, as was happening during the pandemic, as you mentioned, when the rates are at like 2.5 or 3%. But for me, my ideal thing, if rates level off and we hit right at the 5 number, I mean, I think the floodgates are going to come wide open at that point.
Yeah, and that's kind of the norm. And that's over the last decade, that's kind of where we've hovered at, in that 4 or 5-ish range. And I think, when people start to feel a sense of, okay, this is what it's going to be like. And we've already seen it. Like you mentioned, applications are up, over 20%. I think people are starting to come to that realization. Like we were trying to scream and yell at them back in December and November, hey, jump now. But now it's starting to happen. I think we're still seeing some negotiability from sellers. But at some point, if you start getting a lot more buyers back in, sellers are going to realize, okay, we don't have to do that anymore. And they're not going to negotiate. And it's kind of all over at that point.
You want to buy a house, but high interest rates have got you down? Take the rate challenge and send us a verifiable loan estimate from another lender, and we'll beat it and pay for your appraisal up to $600. Here at Give Mortgage, being powered by UMortgage allows us to provide you with unmatched speed and efficiency and the best rates and fees in the market, all while delivering you the concierge level service you deserve. We want you to have an experience getting a mortgage that you'll never forget, and not because you got put through a meat grinder to get it. At Give Mortgage, we give great advice, we give the best rates, and we give back to charity. Visit us at www.give-mortgage.com or call us at 480-331-4684 to schedule a free consultation to see how we can help.
One of the things that you brought up, I wanted to touch on too, is you brought up the skill set for the brokers or real estate brokers. Like you got to be on top of your game because, honestly, a lot of people got into the business when it was easy. It wasn't easy in some respects. Like if you get a listing, okay, it was easy to sell. If you had buyers, you might have had to show, 20 houses to be able to get a deal. And now it's kind of shifted. What is a good way for the consumer to know, is this particular broker a good one? Like how do they figure this out? Because I feel like that's one of the hardest things for the consumer to understand. Who do you choose?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important, in this day and age, you really have to find someone that has a presence. They should have a presence. And well, I'll say that in twofold. The presence, number one, when you look online, you can see the history of what they've done. You see they're experienced. You will find reviews from other clients that they've had to speak to what they've done. And what's their presence online? I mean, it's just, I would say use the same notion of what we do when we're looking for a great restaurant. You look at all the reviews. You say, okay, well, they may get a couple of negative reviews here or there, but for the most part, it's pretty positive. Okay, I'm going to give this guy I'm going to give him a shot. And also, most importantly, look for referrals. Look for referrals of people that who've worked with someone that can say, listen, I've worked with Jeffrey. I know that he's excellent. You give him a call, he'll take care of you. And I think that's really important. And as for brokers, we just really have to put ourselves out there and make sure that everything that you're saying is timely and accurate. And I know I've said that several times, but that's so important because everything that the consumer is seeing, we have to be able to speak to it, because consumers now are in the past, when you first in real estate 10, 15 years ago, the consumer really didn't know anything. We had all the information. We kept it all, all
very
to
tight,
ourselves.
held to the vest.
Yeah, completely. Now it's all out there. So you better be able to speak to what's going on in Wall Street. You better be able to speak to what's going on with the Fed. When's the next Fed rate hike happening? Is it happening? What's happening in your market? What the price per square foot is? Like, you have to be able to speak to everything all the time. And I know it's a lot. And I tell you, I read everything every single day. I can't meet someone and they're discussing something and I can't speak about it, and articulate effectively exactly what's going on. You have to be that source. And another good thing would be, what type of vendors can they provide to you? For me, let's say if I'm on the buy side and I'm working with someone immediately, and if it didn't come in as a referral, immediately I want to show my add value right away. I want to have, the mortgage brokers that I have a great relationship that I can send them right away, attorneys that I can send them right away. When it comes to time for inspectors that I can give to you right away, all within my phone immediately. If you have that conversation with someone upon first meeting them as the consumer, and on either side, quite frankly, and they aren't speaking with a level of confidence and knowledge, and they can't provide that information for you, that's right there a red flag to know that that's not the right person.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I tell people that a lot. you have gut feelings for a reason. It's usually a little bit of a red flag, and not to say that you just always go that direction, but it warrants further investigation, and digging a little deeper. And I think it sounds to me like you probably have a better ability to speak about the financial markets than I would say a typical agent. Obviously, there's very good ones out there. There's some that are not so great out there. Do you feel like that's an area that, as a real estate professional, is super important, or is that better left to like a mortgage broker, for example? Because you hear all this, stay in your lane all the time.
Right. No, I think it's important to have at least surface level information that you can speak to. And when it comes to, I'm not telling someone to jump on this product immediately, but what I'm going to tell them that this product is available, and speak to this professional in this realm, and they will tell you more about it. But a lot of times people aren't even privy to this information. So if you can at least, discuss the subject matter with the client or with the buyer, and then at that point them to someone to really break down all the granular points of it, then that's what you do. But I think it's definitely important to know, especially right now, the financial piece of what's going on and how it directly affects them. And you're always considering, and there may be times where someone may not, whether it be an attorney or even a mortgage broker, may not give certain information to them right away, or they just simply forget about it. But I'll tell them, okay, when you speak to your mortgage broker, you ask them about a purchase SEMA and see if that can happen. And we'll see the bank that the buyer has or the bank that the seller has, and see if that can happen to save some money on your transfer taxes. Stuff like that you start to put that messaging and that information, then that's really helpful. And I think that's why it's really important to ultimately answer your question. It is important to be able to, effectively speak about the financial piece.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're able to do that and you're proficient at it, because you do hear people say, yeah, no, leave that alone, leave that to the mortgage broker. And as a mortgage broker, there's a balancing act. I think you're talking about, like, the really granular details. Yes, leave to the person who spends all of their time in that space. But I would much rather have a real estate broker have a good working knowledge of how the financial markets and what the projections are for not just home values but interest rates, because as we've seen, like, this is evidence this last year, interest rates affect home values. Like, absolutely, they're definitely interrelated, and you can't operate in with blinders on as a real estate broker and just focus solely on the home value in the real estate market without paying attention to the financial markets and their impact on it. And so for me as a consumer, I would much rather hear from somebody like you that has a good working understanding of how this stuff works together. And then you've got a great professional to refer them off to do the analysis part of the individual situation. I think that's great that you do that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that, when I mention, referring mortgage brokers or whomever, the other vendors, the mortgage broker and all these vendors, we're all part of a team. As the real estate agent, again, to go back to a sports analogy, I'm the Bill Belichick. I'm calling the plays, but I'm telling you to go to this guy for this play, go to that guy for that play. And I've already vetted everyone, so I know who they are. And so they come back to me with information. Okay, this is what it is. This is their pre-approvals for this amount. We could, if we can get some income, if it's a multifamily, we can add that to the value of the loan, and that'll be great for them. So, keep in mind that everyone is a team, and you're just coordinating everything. So as the head coach, you're not on the field, Tom Brady, but you do know all the plays, and Tom Brady's going to execute. So you're my Tom Brady. You're going to execute when I send them to you to get your mortgage. And then when I go to the attorney, that's my defensive lineman that's going to beat up the opposing side to make sure they have your best interest at heart. So that's the way you really need to look at it for your consumer.
No, I think that's great advice that you give there. Now, a question that I have for you, because the market is sort of turned and sellers are having to be more accommodating and actually market their properties more, what are some of the things that you can advise a seller to do to make their property and the deal more attractive to buyers now, since they've got to be the ones who are coming to the table with more flexibility?
I think one of the first things is going to be working with someone that really has a good sense of where the market is. And what I mean by that is where to price the property and how, like, just exactly where to price the property, not trying to be too aggressive, knowing where we are in the marketplace. And everyone thinks their properties is special, but really stepping away from that property, the personal piece, and really look at it as a transaction, as a business transaction, and know what the value of your home is. That's one piece. Now, once we get that going, and that's a challenge, and that's a piece that you have to have the right agent to be able to communicate that so that they understand why that's the case. Because there's going to be someone else in their ear that's going to tell them, oh, price it, 25% more. Well, it'll sit on the market for probably another 100 days if that's the case. Secondly, now you really have to be able to differentiate yourself in as far as your marketing goes. So again, I have the great skill set of working in television, being able to use that to get your property out there and to really separate your property from everything else. And that's not solely the property tour, which we do creative property tours to really showcase the great part of the property. But now, who am I going to align myself with, and who am I going to work with that could get your property into the eyeballs that might not see it? So that could be a tastemaker, that could be a tastemaker, that could be what is it called? I'm drawing a blank here. Influencer. That's the word. Influencers. So that way, they can get it into their realm and into their prospective followers that they have. And people always say, well, you know what? My buyer isn't going to be on TikTok, and my buyer is not going to be on Instagram or anything like that. You know what? Your buyer may not, but someone who knows your buyer is. That kid, I can personally speak to having a property, having the kid of the buyer see the property, present it to their parents, and they're like, oh, this, I'm going to take a look at it. So it works. If it didn't work, we wouldn't be doing it, and this wouldn't be the direction that the business is going.
Yeah.
It clearly works. Let's be effective at what we're doing, and you'll get the results. So that's what I would advise a seller to do, is to really find someone that's dynamic and knowledgeable, and not just throwing something on your third party platforms and thinking it's priced right and just hoping that it gets to find the buyer. No, we have to proactively find the buyers now.
Yeah, and the pricing strategy is, I don't think we could overstate that, because there is actually a strategy out there that some real estate brokers employ to, in essence, tell you what you want to hear, right? And then they have a strategy of doing multiple price drops in a pretty short period of time, right? Yeah. Tell people why that's such a bad idea.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I'll draw this as an analogy. If you go to a supermarket and you're buying a gallon of milk, and you see that gallon of milk has been sitting on the shelf forever, and the price of the milk starts to drop because no one's buying it, you're not buying that milk. You think there's something wrong with that milk. And that's exactly the case when buyers look at your property and the multiple price drops. Right away, you talk about red flags, that becomes a red flag. Why has no one else looked at this property? Why is it still sitting on the market at this point? Why are they so aggressively, doing so many price drops? So that doesn't work. And what I do I'll give this out to folks, and you can definitely use it. What I do oftentimes, if you're in a position where a seller is giving you pushback, I don't look for a hard number. I'm not going to lose a listing on not agreeing on a price point. What I'm going to do, I'll give you my floor and I'll give you my ceiling. So in essence, I'm kind of controlling that right there. And the floor is going to be where it will sell tomorrow, and the ceiling may be a little more aggressive than where I'd want to be. But I'm going to give that person the floor or ceiling. If for some reason they're above my ceiling, what I'll tell them is, okay, we're going to give it right now. We're going to give you 25 days on the market. If we don't get any level of offers and or at least inquiries, let's agree right now that we'll drop it to X price. And I'll have that included within the body of the exclusive, so that I don't even have to go back and have this conversation. It's already there. So that's what I do. Because otherwise you're just wasting your time. What's going to happen is the next broker, and people always say it's always great to be the second broker. The next broker will come in and do the price cut. And by that time, they're so beaten up, the seller is, they're going to agree to it right away. So why waste, your time and your money and in marketing something where it's not even priced accurately? So that's a great strategy that I employ to really really eliminate that whole scenario altogether.
Yeah, I mean, people want to have some level of control or perceived control,
Yeah.
and it's a difficult conversation sometimes to have because, like you alluded to earlier, everybody values their property probably more than the general public does because there's personal attachment to it. But having to get people to come to the conclusion and that that's not what everybody else sees. It's not that your house isn't beautiful and wonderful,
Right.
but we have to really look at the data and the facts. And that's, I think, the challenge when you're dealing with somebody that's buying or selling their primary residence versus working with an investor that's looking for something that they're not going to live at. It's very emotional when it's a primary residence. It's very fact-based and income and expense-based when you're dealing with an investor. Do you deal kind of equally with them? Do you deal mostly in primary residences? Kind of what's your mix?
I do a little bit of both. A lot of investors, a lot of high net worth individuals that are looking to expand their portfolio. So we do that. And then conversely, I work with end users that are looking to sell the property, or a homeowner that's looking to sell their property. And I work with developers that are looking for great margins. So your messaging again has to change in each scenario, because that developer that actually called me just as we were getting started, he wants a high number. And I have to tell them, listen, this isn't going to work. And we're going to sit on the market and you're going to say, oh, Jeff isn't doing it. You're going to find someone else who does the price drop. And the next thing you know, there you go. You're in contract. So I think what's important is really understanding whomever it is that you're representing. And you're right. It's absolutely, especially on the sell side, it's absolutely a difficult conversation to have sometimes. But I think you have to be transparent. You have to be truthful. But then you have to find a way to, and I think the best thing you said is have them have that perception that they're actually leading in the direction of where they want to go with the sales price. Oftentimes it's always a great idea when it comes from them. You bring it to them and it makes immediate pushback. But when they say it, you know what? I think you're right. So, and one big piece about real estate that I've learned, and this transcends any market, but especially in real estate, it's a lot about psychology. It's a lot about psychology, so you have to, look at who you're speaking to, see what their delivery is, what type of person are they, there's a lot goes on outside of, or in addition to knowing the industry and knowing how to get through a transaction in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those communication skills that you have as a broker are critical, because you've got to be able to speak to people in their language, not necessarily a foreign language, but how they communicate, the vocabulary that they use, and make sure that you can relate to them. And for the consumer, if you're talking to somebody that you're just not relating to, you've got to think about it from the perspective of who are my target audience as buyers, because even though I may not have the same communication style, I need my representative to represent me to that buyer population that is going to want my property. That piece of it, I think, is really important. And I think personally, I feel like, as a whether it's real estate or mortgage, you've got to be able to adapt. You got to be able to work with people in a way that they feel comfortable, and adjust your style and how you communicate. But above all, you got to be really, really transparent and honest, because without that, it doesn't matter how much, how good you are at communicating if you're giving them a line of BS.
Yeah, I mean, meet them where they're at, and just convey that information, even if it's hard. Try to coat it with a little sugar, but they gotta swallow that pill. Especially in this market.
Yeah, a lot of great information you've shared. If people are watching or listening and they think that you might be the right person for them, how do they reach out to you? How do they find you?
Well, I'm on all platforms. Actually, I'll say all. I'm not on TikTok, which I'm gonna definitely have my presence there soon.
You just had your first TikTok video idea. I think you got to get on there with that one, man.
Listen, I think I'm doing it. I finally. There's one thing, and I'll tell you this. There's one thing that I'm a big Tony Robbins fan also. And he always says, or one thing that he said recently was, don't negotiate with your brain. You're going to decide you're going to do something and you do it, and that's it. So no negotiating. I'm doing it right away. That's happening. But you can reach me on LinkedIn, Jeffrey St. Arromand. I'm also on Instagram, JSA_sells_NYC. Where else am I? Facebook, obviously, I'm on Facebook as well. So and soon I'll be on TikTok. Matter of fact, today I will be on TikTok.
We're going to give you a deadline there today. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us and helping us educate the public.
Listen, this is what we have to do collectively. Everyone in the real estate community, continue to educate, continue to bring information to dispel the big bad media and their headlines.
Yeah, they like to get us, and it's our responsibility to shed a little light, shed a little honesty and transparency, and give people facts, because we don't want people to miss out on opportunities.
And this is opportunity right now. This is the opportunity. Whenever there's any level of issues in the market, there's always opportunity. So this is when we need to be aggressive and take advantage of it, because it's not going to stay here for long. So take advantage while we can.
Yep. This is where the money's made. Well, thank you guys all for joining us today. And again, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you catch the next episode drop in, and share this on your favorite podcast platform. We'd really appreciate a good rating. Jeffrey, thank you. Appreciate you coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And listen, let's make this year the best year for brokers, buyers, and sellers. We all have to be aligned.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will see you next time on the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Take care.
Thanks for joining us. And please remember to go and subscribe, like, share, all that cool stuff to help us grow. And come back to listen to our next episode. Until then, go out and live life uncensored.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to help us out and subscribe. Follow and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out on YouTube for the full video podcast. If you want more information on any of the topics discussed on today's episode, email us at uncensoredrealestatepodcast@gmail.com or give the Cardenas Mortgage team a call at 480-331-4684.